right, Mayor. So we are here for episode 7 of Raz and 60. You want to open up the show?
Yep. This is Mayor Raz J. Baraka. I just want to welcome everybody to episode 7, season 2 of Raz and 60. On today's episode, we're spotlighting 2 women who are impacting their communities in a positive way. Our first guest on the show is a Newark, New Jersey native, Simone Gordon, AKA the Black Fairy Godmother. We are going to find out just how she got this name and more. And our second guest is Alfa Demmellash. Hopefully I said that correctly.
You did.
CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital. And I know a lot about that organization. I'm glad we are interviewing. This will be a great show today, y'all.
Yeah. Yep, these women are making history. We just, going to focus in on Women's History Month being in March.
That's right.
And these women are making history in the community, which is great. So as we always do, we're going to go over some updates in Newark news before we get into our guests. So we have COVID. Let's talk about, of course, COVID. We got the free COVID-19 test that you can get at home if you go to covidtest.gov. Have you gotten your test already, May?
I have, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I've gotten
I got mine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're fairly easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
Just follow instructions. You should be able to get that.
Mm-hmm.
But we still testing people and still doing vaccinations at all our sites in the city of Newark.
Right.
Our numbers, the test positivity rate, 3-day and 7-day averages going down.
Right.
Hopefully we have more good news later on. But, as the numbers go down, pre-Omicron levels, we'll begin to take some restrictions back away.
Yeah. Yep. And for if anyone wants to know the most recent and accurate numbers, they can just watch your Facebook Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. And also, like you said, there was an update as far as the vaccination requirements. Newark was requiring vaccinations, proof of vaccinations, but that has changed a little bit since the numbers have been decreasing, right?
Yeah. So most places don't have to do that unless you're having an event or party or function where there's 250 or more people.
Right.
And by the grace of God, if our numbers keep going down, by next week, that'll be gone too.
Hopefully. And that'll definitely help as far as like the small businesses and stuff, because that did impact them, but safety and health was first.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's go into some of the updates in Newark news around the city. So you unveiled the Miller Street Pathways Housing Center a couple of weeks ago. That was where Miller Street School was turned into basically a homeless shelter for people, for our residents without addresses. Yeah,
it's a very comprehensive shelter, mental health treatment, drug treatment. There's a few beds for families, beds for some of the most difficult to house, opportunity for cold blue when it gets very cold, and code red when it gets really hot outside. So opportunity for people to go there, but it's also a place where folks can transition into actually permanent housing.
Right.
So that it's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. It was a really nice facility. I saw it in person. It was really nice. They have a nice chef kitchen. They have a computer room, I think I saw. They have individual rooms for families, and even places like a washer and dryer rooms.
That's
so it was really nice. Really nice. So also the first Newark Public Housing project was demolished on February the 17th, and you helped to demolish it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's so big, it's not completely demolished. We just began the demolition process. It's one of the largest housing projects, in the city, abandoned, and we began knocking it down on February 17th. So excited about that. It was put up in 1939.
Wow, that's a long time ago. Yeah. It's been standing for all of those years. That was a result of some great architecture, because it stood up all of those years.
Yeah,
but
testament to the engineering and the builders. Yeah,
it was time for it to go, and it's a sign of definitely a more new development coming to the city. Definitely, Newark is turning over a new leaf as far as just evolving right into a new time.
That's right. Yeah. It's going to be a beautiful community, and it helps liven that area up, man, and begin to transform it. It's been in a very difficult place for a very, very long time.
Right. And moving right along, $2 million of emergency aid your administration is allocating that to combat food insecurity here in the city. Can you elaborate on that some?
Yeah, it's really targeting urban farmers to begin using their farms as cooperatives to get people to come in and get food at low cost, groceries, produce at low cost there, and set up even community refrigerators where people can go and get basic goods and services out of there, whether it's eggs or bread or milk, they could pull out of there as well, in areas where they're classified as food deserts in our community. So it's really giving them a push to allow them to focus in on, using what they're doing to feed our community.
Right. I like that. I really like that idea because I think it's important to focus on just healthy eating, and that is a great way to do it. You know where your food is coming from. You help grow it. You could just pick it out the ground. That's dope.
That's right.
All right. So State of the City is coming up March 15th.
Yeah. We having part 2. I told you our part 2 was coming, and it's really an opportunity to focus on everything else other than just water.
Right.
Other than just COVID, excuse me. We've been focusing on COVID for a long time, and the first one was us focusing on COVID. So now we get to focus on all the other things that we've been doing in the city in a more in-depth way.
Right.
And talk about it, because we went through a lot in the last 2.5 years. Absolutely.
And if people wanted to get tickets or information, they can email Robinson, SHE, so Robinson, she, ROBINSON, SHE, @ci.norc.nj.us, or call 973-733-3274. And let's move on to water. So this was like a milestone for the city, right? The lead service replacement line program, the final lead service line was replaced, and it was acknowledged and celebrated with the press event featuring Kamala Harris, our vice president, the EPA administrator, Michael Regan, Governor Murphy, and many other elected officials.
That's right.
I want to ask you though, when that happened, how did that feel for you? That accomplishment?
Well, it was just a relief.
Right.
I was just, all of this behind us, all of the work that we've done, there's a huge mountain that we've climbed. And so it was more relief than anything. Maybe I'll celebrate 2 years from now, but we just happy to get through so much in such a condensed period of time.
Right.
People was taking us, it's going to take a decade to do this.
Right. And it was done in under 3 years.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. All right, so before we move on to welcoming on our first guest, is there anything you want to speak about, you think people should know about, anything on your mind?
No, just, I know people are, it's an uneasy time with COVID, and then now you have this Ukrainian conflict that, can almost constitute a war, a world war, that, people are exchanging very dangerous words even today. I mean, even recently, Vladimir Putin threatened that he has weapons to use against people who interfere with what they're doing. So
wow.
We just, just a very difficult time that we're in, and we just need to be as close as we can, understanding what's going on in the world and our community, be engaged with the news, with our family, and pay attention to what's going on. I mean, sometimes we get so oblivious to what's happening, we get caught up in social media and a whole bunch of other things. So we need to really focus on what's going on so we can be aware and alert.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy what's happening. So let's welcome on Simone Gordon.
Yeah.
In honor of Women's History Month, we are focusing the show on women impacting their communities in a positive way. Would you like to introduce her, Mayor?
Yeah. First Women's History Month guest, Simone Gordon, is a Newark, New Jersey native who has been dubbed the Black Fairy Godmother, devoted her life's work to helping women and mothers in need. She's a young mother, activist, advocate, and motivator. And we're going to get her to come motivate us on here today. So, all y'all out there, give it up for Simone Gordon.
Yep.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Excellent. Oh, we're glad to have you on our show. We just introduced you. We excited about it. Women's History Month. We want to highlight some of the work that you're doing here in this area, positively impacting the lives of young women and girls. It's definitely doing the work. And I just wanted to start off by asking you what drove you to do this type of work that you're doing now?
What drove me to do the work that I'm doing right now for marginalized single mothers across, the U.S. I started out losing my job due to the banks. They crashed a little bit, and I was on unemployment. And 3 days later, after I lost my job, my son got a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And I was going to numerous hospitals and different organizations to receive help, but no one was answering the phone. So I panicked as a single mother and decided to go to social media and ask everyone, where can I get help for my son? And there was a Facebook friend who said that there was a group that helped marginalized women in the area. And I joined that group, and I made a post and stated that my son had autism, and I have been trying to reach Children's Specialized Hospital. And at that time, it wasn't even open in Newark. They were in Mountainside, they were in South Jersey. And I was not getting anywhere. So one of the women decided to contact the chairperson through LinkedIn and explain to him that my son's been on the waiting list for about 6 months for help. Later on that day, I got a phone call from that chairperson, and my son went ahead and got the services that he needed. I voiced my opinion that there were many women in our community that were being pushed to the lower level of the list and not getting the resources. And he stated, well, there's going to be a hospital that's opening in Newark. And I said, no, my son needs it now. I became the Black Fairy Godmother by just voicing that we were not getting the resources. I opened up a Facebook group, start fundraising, start sending out food, emergency diapers and formula, and just letting women know, let's start vision boards and going back to school and getting trades. And that's how it all began.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
definitely.
Yeah.
So can you just give a little more detail about your foundation? Because that's where most of your work, well, all of your work really lies. So can you just explain a little more detail? You talked about how it started, but can you tell us exactly what your organization does?
The Black Fairy Godmother Foundation assists marginalized families with emergency assistance, food, housing, and we assist women who are facing situations with domestic violence. During the time that I was getting emergency food and emergency medicine, we reached out to Instacart, Target, and Amazon and stated, hey, we are spending a lot of money. What can you do to help our community? They went ahead and partnered with us and waived all the delivery fees. And also they give us a stipend every month to families in the area. So that's how that started. And with domestic violence, there's not a lot of shelters, and we all know, the crisis during the pandemic. So we reached out to Airbnb and extended stay throughout the U.S., and they also started a little program where you could put in a code and they would give you a certain amount of days free on the behalf of the foundation. So I just started networking during the pandemic, networking with Liz Gilbert, who's an author, and she speak about women, Glenn Doyle, and other celebrities, and voice my opinion. You guys are all writing books about marginalized communities and Black women, but what are you guys doing? So they start amplifying my Instagram and my Facebook, and that's how the word got spreaded. Wow. And that's how the foundation became big.
This was your calling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's all right. I want to say, talk a little about what actually does Instacart do for you guys?
What Instacart does is they waive the delivery fees, and they gave us a stipend of $2,000 a month towards families' groceries. So our limit is $350, and many people say, well, you can go to a shelter or you go to a food pantry. I went to plenty. However, some people have dietary restrictions. Some people have special needs children, and some of the elderly have type 2 diabetes, so they can't eat a lot of things. So through Instacart, there's numerous stores. We send out medical supplies, toiletries, and food.
Yeah, and that's like, when we having this argument about homeless people, because really, people feel good when they give stuff to other people. So it's really about them and not about the person.
That's true.
Right? And so they're not really concerned of how to get that person out of the situation they're in. Mm-hmm. So they get angry if you put restrictions on their ability to feed them, because it's about them and not them, not the fact that you might not be feeding them quality stuff, or they may have restrictions or other kind of stuff as well. So that's a great point that you make there, definitely.
Yep. All right, can you talk about, because Hurricane Ida, you offered assistance to 126 victims of flooding, but you didn't only offer it to people who lived on the East Coast, but you also extended your services to people who lived all the way in Louisiana. So can you talk about that, how you did that, and what you were able to do to help the families and women?
A school in Louisiana, our partnership with, I help women get GEDs down in Louisiana, and it's a church that does that, and I partnered with them during the Fairy Dust Scholarship Fund through Tory Burch. A lot of the families were reaching out to me saying there's not organizations that are reaching out, can you do anything? So I said, well, I help marginalized communities throughout the U.S. So I went ahead and did a fundraiser and went live. And we started placing a lot of the families in hotels.
Wow.
Provided them with food. And then there were people that were on the outside, like in England and other countries, and said, hey, what else can I do? Can they do an Amazon list? And we can put the Amazon list on our social media and get them diapers and formula. So we created a program within less than 24 hours to get them all back to where they needed to be. And we even
Incredible.
put some people in Texas, Arizona, until they're able to get stabilized and back to their homes.
Wow.
Amazing. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was going to ask, you said there's a Fairy Dust Scholarship where you partner with Tory Burch. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it is that partnership is with your scholarship fund and Tory Burch?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2004, and everybody is not able to go to college due to funding, due to financial aid, or whatever their family structure is. So I went straight through working at the mall. Then I was blessed with working at Bank of America down here in Newark for 7 years. I was a single mom, so someone who was a follower of mine helped advocate for me and got me back at Essex County College, where I'm studying nursing, and I graduated in May. And I said to her, there's a lot of single Black moms who are experiencing trauma and they want to go back to school. But because of the obstacles that we face with finances, with, childcare, all the above, we can't. So Tory Burch gave me a scholarship to finish out Essex County College, and I brought the attention to them. What about the other women in my community? What about other women in Compton, Chicago, Louisiana, Mississippi? They want to go back to school, but they don't know how. So we created a Fairy Dust Scholarship Program. They donate money every year, and we give it to women who are over the age of 21 that want to go to community college or obtain a trade of their choice.
That's great.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing. So, and this goes on into how you're helping women get to go to school.
Correct.
And how has that been? Is it, you think it's been successful?
It's been successful. Out of the 20 women that we awarded last year, 16 already have trades, and we have 2 that are graduating, and 1 just finished off her associates, and she was accepted to Spelman College, and we put that on IG.
Awesome.
That's great. Yeah. Now, let me ask about this Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Did you received funding from them as well?
Yes, I received funding from them as well, and it was a funny story. I thought it was junk mail. I just received a blank envelope, and I just thought it was coupons.
A blank envelope in the mail?
Yeah, it was like a blank, like the blank white envelopes you get coupons. I thought it was,
Thank God you ain't throw it away.
Right. Thank goodness. So Mr. Angelo Ellerby, he had contacted me. He said, Bill and Melinda Gates sent you some money for the foundation. I said, I didn't get anything. He said, well, you better. I said, well, I just threw a whole bunch of mail in the garbage. He said, you better look through that garbage can. And I looked through that garbage can, and it was for emergency housing and the Angel Food Assistance Fund.
That's so awesome. You did throw it away.
I did, but I went back in with my gloves. So I know now, like my grandmother said, don't throw nothing away. You open it up.
You're making me feel bad. That's the first thing I do.
Right, toss it.
Wow, that's great though, man.
So I was blessed enough that I caught the eye of Bill and Melinda Gates. You never know who's watching and who's listening.
That's right.
True. All right, so if families are in need and are interested in reaching out to your organization, how would they go about doing that?
They can go to our website at www.theblackfairygodmother.org. We are a 501c3, so they have to go through the application process. And within 7 business days, or it's depending on the emergency, maybe up to 48 hours, we will contact them. We have a staff member on board.
Okay.
Excellent. Is it, before we close out, is there anything you want to say to the listeners that we forgot to ask you? Anything you want to push out there, advertise, anything?
I just want to let everybody know that just because you experience a trauma or you are living in a certain situation, it doesn't always mean that you can stay in that situation. There's always ways to achieve your goals. Being a single mom, single Black man, it doesn't matter. You can always achieve your goals. And remember, trauma is temporary.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Thank you for being on here. You're definitely an inspiration to so many people.
Definitely.
Hopefully y'all reach out and contact the Black Fairy Godmother here.
Yep.
And allow her to bless you the way she's been blessed.
Yep. Thank you so much, Simone.
Our second guest is Alfa Demmellash, CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital. Alfa is a native of Ethiopia, moved to the U.S. when she was 12. She later graduated from Harvard in 2003, where she majored in government. Alfa co-founded Rising Tide Capital in 2004, and to date, 2,397 entrepreneurs have graduated from their community business academy. And for those who are unaware, Rising Tide Capital is a nonprofit organization that provides business development services, and they help entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Alfa Demmellash. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital, and it's an honor to be here.
It's our pleasure. You were a little modest, but you're lucky I did the introduction for you before you got on, before you jumped on. So we glad to have you with us. You want to start off, Des?
Yeah, so Alfa, so you are the CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital. Can you give a little more description of what Rising Tide Capital is and why is it important to our community here in Newark?
Sure. So Rising Tide Capital is a nonprofit I co-founded about almost 18 years ago. And its primary goal was to basically try and address the inequities in our economy, in our broader economy, and recognizing that there's been historic and structural challenges for particularly communities of color and entrepreneurs of color to be able to navigate an economy that has not delivered on their ability to sustain their families or to be able to plan for a future that is more equitable. And at the same time, there's also a narrative within the broader culture that is changing, in large part thanks to the leadership of people like the mayor, who's here to create the conditions where that communities of color have a lot of talented individuals, there's a lot of ideas, and there's tremendous opportunities, and that by and large, those entrepreneurs actually care about repairing their communities and having the kinds of enterprises that are really important for future well-being. And so when we started 18 years ago, we thought maybe what's needed and what's missing is really access to financial capital, and that if we could convince the rest of the world and capital holders that there is talent and there is opportunity, that capital would flow and connect into communities where it hasn't been. And we learned very quickly, 2 years into our founding, that financial capital was just the tip of the iceberg, and that we needed to do a lot more to create the kind of social capital, know-how capital, the kind of resilience that comes from community, and a particular missing part of what we saw amongst entrepreneurs and business owners and communities of color. So Rising Tide Capital started a community business academy to address the knowledge capital part, where we train entrepreneurs in business management skills and connect them to one another and to others who have deeper pockets and social capital, which is critical for them to be able to find the kind of longevity needed when you're growing a business. So that's a little bit of the history, but it's been 18 years and it's not an easy process.
But that jumps right into, because the Forbes magazine says that Black women businesses are the fastest rising or businesses, but the catch is only 3% of them stay or mature. And I think you touched on why some of that might be. Mm-hmm. And what are the very specific things that Rising Tide can do to help businesses become more mature?
Absolutely. a lot of that is, when you're growing a business, as you know, you can start it in a lot of these women entrepreneurs, and the vast majority of those we've worked with, and we've worked with nearly 1,000 entrepreneurs just in Newark alone. And Newark still is one of our largest places where our entrepreneurs are. And they start while they're running, while they're actually in a full-time job capacity sometimes, so they're doing it on the side. It takes a much longer time because it just takes a lot longer to pull together the capital you need to actually start something. Mm-hmm. And especially right now, there's a tremendous, I think, opportunity that shouldn't be missed, which is savings rates are higher. In fact, we have one of our entrepreneurs is having a launch in Newark in Central Ward on March 5th. And she's got, she used her savings. She said it gave her the opportunity to leap, to open a building, to refurbish. But, the key piece for that longevity is, if she had co-investors, if she could own the building, if she could have the kind of longer term contracts, that would enable her to have the confidence to then be able to hire people. Because when you're making commitments to hiring people, you need to have a level of confidence that the revenue would be there. And so I think there is, I know you know it well because you've been trying to address it in terms of a level of economic security for these women to be able to grow and to make decisions well into the future that could enable them to grow their companies and offer greater and greater value in the marketplace. But they can't do that if there aren't co-investors, and if there is a level of red tape or if capital is really expensive, and then they're churning water instead of growing the enterprise, which they're more than capable of doing.
Right. So I guess my next question would be, they're capable of growing an enterprise and they have all of these skills. What do you think the hesitancy is with certain larger corporations who have the money to invest? What do you think their hesitance? Where does their hesitancy lie when it comes to investing in small Black-owned or brown-owned businesses? Why is it such a challenge for them to feel compelled to invest a large amount of money?
Yeah, I think companies, like people, sometimes are creatures of habit. And so it's a lot easier to keep doing business with the other companies that there needs to be a little bit of pressure. And I think that happened, during this pandemic, particularly with the murder of George Floyd. I think that had created the level of pressure to say, we will invest, and now where are those investments, where are they going? Right. And then oftentimes then the readiness of the entrepreneurs to be able to absorb capital or to be able to deliver on services then become the next level of challenge. And that's why organizations like Rising Tide, and it's a collaborative team sport, it's not any one organization that can pull it off. We partner with almost every part of the ecosystem in Newark when we're trying to support our entrepreneurs, because that readiness factor is the one that we're trying to tackle. So it's not an excuse for investing.
Right.
So where are some places that, young African-American entrepreneurs particularly women, can get capital?
So there is, you have to map the ecosystem, and we've mapped the ecosystem over the past few years. You've got people who are, by and large, if you don't have any history and you're just starting out, then it becomes more around the microloans. And so whether, it's your Grameen's, and GNEC exists, Greater Newark Enterprises Corporation, we've been looking at what are the barriers even just to getting those small amounts of capital. Right. A lot of times it may be history, but it's also because of the lack of history, if their lender is nervous about the risk of getting repaid, this is where then we're experimenting with those partners to say, what if we had a guarantee? The SBA guarantees loans that are much larger to much larger entities, but for smaller loans, there's still a hesitancy even to provide that level of lending because there is an absence of history. So that's one of the handicaps, but I think there is movement and opportunity there, and groups like PayPal and Kiva, and there's a whole world of this new fintech that is working on making capital a little bit more accessible. But we need capital at different stages and different amounts, and so getting even, whether they be angels or groups who are coming together to say we need to make larger level investments, longer term, more favorable terms. That is a work that has to be ongoing because more of it is necessary. There's still a paucity of capital.
Can you give us some success stories of some of the, attendees or students who've been enrolled in some of the Rising Tide Capital entrepreneurship courses and went through the program? Can you give us some of the, a couple huge success stories?
Yeah, well, I did. So Rising Tide has worked now with over almost 4,500 entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And they're 975 from Newark alone. And they're in every sector, including actually one of the entrepreneurs who was organizing the Universal Basic Income project itself. So our entrepreneurs are in many, many different places, which I love. But one of the most inspiring stories is a Newark grandmother, Edna Rashid, who's 60 years old, who started a company after a tragedy with her daughter, who had actually passed, unfortunately, from congenital heart failure.
Right.
And she had to raise her 2 grandkids. And so she created Naima's family. It's NF insulation, it's mechanical insulation, eco-friendly. And she's been growing that and having contracts with much larger companies. And so she's a complete inspiration.
Right.
And also, part of the reason why it's important to see those entrepreneurs for what they're doing, because there's trillions of dollars coming around the infrastructure bill and around green economy. And we have to be on the forefront of seeing where we're not just informing the policy, but are actually making sure that investments are flowing to entrepreneurs like that to help them scale appropriately.
Right. Right.
Why is it important to have Black women businesses?
It's kind of like asking, why is it important to have oxygen for a
Right.
community? But because I'm sure most of us in this room wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that grandmother that is starting a business, or including myself. My mom was a seamstress who came to this country, was a waitress as a refugee from Ethiopia, and she made a commitment to reunite with me, and it took her 10 years, but we would have never been reunited if it wasn't for her saying, I'm never going to see this child if I just kept waitressing at $2.13 and started a little business, making gowns and sewing, clothes that had a mix of African and her new Western culture. And she grew that business and saved enough and bought my ticket and brought me here and educated me. And that's the reason why I do what I do, because there are thousands of them, millions of them across this country and in communities. And when things really break down, they're the comeback story. They're the ones that make it happen. They're the ones that we had a network of Rising Tide entrepreneurs who are sewing masks at the height of the pandemic when there weren't masks available, and they were dropping them off at places where people who are either in recovery or formerly incarcerated or refugees or domestic violence survivors, people who are invisible often to the system, and they can't go on Amazon and try to fight for limited, masks.
Right.
It's these women entrepreneurs coming together to sew masks and drop them off. And so I fundamentally believe, and this is the reason why I do what I do and why the team at Rising Tide is so fired up. It's at the end of the day, it's these entrepreneurs that actually both make us resilient during the really tough times, help us retain our humanity because they're the creatives, they're the entrepreneurial artists, and give us culture, which is as fundamental and important, I think, to life and well-being as having money.
Right.
Absolutely. All right. So can you give us one piece of advice that you would like to share to an entrepreneur who might be listening and who's curious about starting their business from scratch and taking that leap of faith? Is there any one piece of advice you would like to just give them?
Sure. I would say that definitely reach out to Rising Tide Capital, risingtidecapital.org. We have our community business academies running twice a year. They're fully scholarshiped. And I would also advise them to come in, to plan, to be surrounded by like-minded people. And that's really, really important, especially right now because the pandemic has made us feel disconnected for a lot of us, and people are not out and about and networking because of the health risks. But do connect, do make friends, and Rising Tide is one such a place, but really whatever door you can find to make sure that you're in front of the city, that you're in front of companies, so people know that we exist, that we're trying to start and grow businesses. And so if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be out there. You have to let people know and connect. And those relationships are how capital will flow. But the last thing I will say is it's a long-term game. So don't get discouraged, and definitely take care of yourself and your mental well-being. That's a big part of our focus right now. Rising Tide is making sure that people are actually sound in their mind and in their spirit as they're pursuing their entrepreneurial dreams.
Nice. So we just want to thank you for being on the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You
for
gave
having
out some
me.
great information today.
Thank you.
Please, ladies, if you're starting your business, you're trying to get it together, Rising Tide Capital is the place you should be.
Yeah.
Alfa Demmellash.
And the
Right?
men too. Don't forget the men.
Men too.
Men
Yeah,
too.
men too. I
Just
apologize.
about the ladies.
Men and women. Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
partnership.
Yeah, it
Yes.
definitely is. We just shouting out Women's History Month. That's all. But
It's true.
you
It's
know,
true. Thank you.
it's important that all of us begin to develop business when we can. So thank you for the work that you're doing in the city and all over the state. So God bless you. Continue.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do. We really appreciate it.
Okay, that was a very great and informative show, Mayor. What do you think?
I thought it was great. It's awesome. Two incredible women.
Yeah.
Simone Gordon, Alfa Demmellash, in our community. Thank all of y'all for listening to their stories, and reach out to them and get the assistance and the help that you need. You can follow our City of Newark's Facebook page at facebook.com/City of Newark on Twitter. Our handle is at City of Newark NJ, or you can follow our Instagram account at City of Newark NJ. Also follow me on Twitter at Raz J. Baraka, on Instagram at Raz J. Baraka. You can also follow my Facebook at facebook.com/Raz J. Baraka. And thanks again for listening, and please share this episode with your social circles. Remember to tune in to the next episode of Raz in 60, premiering on Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. Remember, we release new episodes each first Tuesday. And I want to let everybody know we will be expanding our listener reach soon. We will be back on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other additional platforms very soon. And remember to use hashtag RazN60 if you'd like to ask me questions or make a comment about what you've heard on the show. Post your questions on social media using the hashtag RazN60. Quote, "You can have it all, just not all at once." Oprah Winfrey. God bless y'all.